Lightning cracked open the sky, revealing a sprawling greenhouse battered by the midnight storm. Sheets of rain rattled the ancient glass, and in each brilliant flash, one could glimpse the skeletal remains of vines and broken clay pots scattered across the damp floor. Huddled at the center of this eerie tableau was the legendary gilded thorn, its once luminous petals now withered and gray. A single gust of wind sent the plant quivering, as if gasping for life under the relentless downpour. Then came the faint crunch of footsteps on shattered glass. A hooded figure stepped into view, cloak drenched, face concealed by the rain-soaked hood. The silhouette approached the gilded thorn with cautious reverence, gloved hand almost brushing the wilted petals. Thunder roared again, revealing the glint of a distinctive ring on the stranger's finger, an intricate design shaped like a coiled serpent. For a moment, it seemed the thorn stirred, beckoned by the figure's silent presence. But before any hint of motive could be uncovered, the intruder whirled and fled into the storm-ravaged night, leaving the thorn trembling in an empty greenhouse. Morning arrived in the kingdom's capital with little fanfare, the storm clouds shifting into a dull gray that cloaked the city streets. Tucked away on a narrow lane stood a modest florist's workshop, where Celine hovered over a display of freshly cut wildflowers. Her nimble fingers arranged stems of daffodils and roses into a cascading bouquet. Ordinarily, she'd savor the comforting routine, but today her pulse thrummed with restless energy. She had been up since dawn, haunted by a sense that something extraordinary was about to knock on her door. She was right. The messenger arrived just as she set the final blossom in place. Tall, stone-faced, and clad in the royal household's emblem, he offered a sealed envelope. Celine's heart hammered the moment she saw the gilded crest, no mere invitation, but a summons from the palace. Breaking the wax seal, she read, "By royal decree, you are requested to present your floral designs at the palace for the upcoming wedding. Prince Aurelian personally awaits your expertise." Her breath caught. She'd dreamed of a commission like this. Proof her artistry could transcend the small celebrations and storefront displays she was known for. Yet apprehension stirred too. The royal court was a realm of glittering grandeur but also ruthless judgment. One misstep could mar her reputation forever. An hour later, Celine was navigating the cobblestone streets, a wooden cart of sample bouquets rattling behind her. Despite the city's dreary sky, the royal wedding had become everyone's sole focus. Colorful banners hung from windows, trumpeters practiced jubilant tunes, and townsfolk chattered about the grand event. Still, amid the excitement, hushed rumors clung to corners like shadows. Whispers spoke of foul play, of mysterious sabotage that plagued the palace grounds. Some cited an ancient family curse that cursed each royal marriage. Superstition, she tried to tell herself. Yet her skin prickled. The palace loomed ahead in gleaming marble. Majestic spires and gilded arches dominated the skyline, guarded by stately sentinels who surveyed newcomers with hawk-like stares. A steward greeted her at the gates, ushering her through corridors lined with portraits of past rulers. The flicker of torchlight against marble floors imparted a solemn air, as if these halls hid centuries of secrets. At last, she emerged into a spacious hall, bustling with servants draping luxurious fabrics and footmen hauling crates of imported delicacies. Amid the flurry stood Prince Aurelian himself. Celine's pulse quickened as she observed him from a distance. He was taller than she'd expected, hair the color of dark honey, and his formal attire accentuated a regal bearing. Yet his eyes held an edge, as though he bore an invisible weight few knew existed. A hush fell as the steward cleared his throat. "Your Highness, this is Celine, the chosen florist for the wedding decorations." The prince turned, studied her sample bouquet, and gave the faintest nod of approval. "I've heard commendations of your work," he said evenly. "I trust you can bring something truly exceptional to our ceremony." Celine mustered a polite bow, her heart hammering. "I'll do everything to surpass your expectations, Your Highness." He dipped his head, satisfied for now. "Good. We've had incidents. Missing items, damaged supplies. If you require anything, inform the staff at once. I want no further disruptions." She acknowledged his warning. The rumors of sabotage were evidently real. As the prince excused himself to consult an advisor, Celine surveyed the hall again. Grand though it was, there lurked an undercurrent of tension. Harried servants glanced over shoulders, as if fearful of what might go wrong next. Her inspection ended abruptly when a voice, dripping with condescension, spoke from behind. "So you're the florist everyone keeps whispering about." Celine turned to see a poised woman in an ornate crimson gown. "I'm Lady Corinne," the woman said, an aristocratic tilt to her chin. "I often handle the palace's floral designs myself, but apparently they wanted fresh blood for this auspicious event. Just be aware, dear, the court can be unforgiving." Her gaze strayed over Celine's modest attire. "And we can't afford even the smallest misstep on the day of the ceremony, can we?" Before Celine could respond, Corinne pivoted in a swirl of perfume, leaving a trail of half-veiled smugness. The message was clear. "You're on my turf now." Pressing her lips into a firm line, Celine reminded herself why she was here: to deliver a masterpiece worthy of the royal wedding. Gossip and sabotage might swirl around them, but she had no intention of crumbling under palace intrigues. She busied herself checking arrangements, making mental notes of how to elevate each arch and centerpiece. If mischief threatened the wedding, her dedication might just become the kingdom's best line of defense. Later that evening, she found herself alone at the palace's main greenhouse, thanks to a tip from a chatty maid who'd mentioned rare blossoms stored there. Thunderclouds still lurked overhead, though the rain had subsided. The greenhouse was eerily quiet. As she stepped inside, the wind rattled the old glass panes. Broken pots lay scattered, and half-dead plants drooped in the corners, signs of neglect. At the center of it all, in a locked case, stood the gilded thorn. She recognized the rumors. A flower said to hold ancient power, believed either to curse or bless a royal union. Celine leaned in, trying to see past the dust streaking the glass. She froze. Across the floor, footprints in a muddy path suggested someone had recently been here, possibly last night in the storm. A whisper of unease slid down her spine. Could this connect to the sabotage rumors? She reached for the lock but found it already unlatched. Inside, the thorn looked wilted and frail, yet faint golden veins still threaded its petals, like hidden veins of precious metal. Gently, she lifted the pot, her hand trembling at the sense of significance. She half expected the flower to crumble to dust at her touch. Lightning flickered outside, echoing the storm that had raged the night before. "We both deserve another chance," she murmured, taking the thorn with her. She intended to revive it, if only because its rumored splendor might provide the perfect focal piece for the wedding. As she carried it out, though, she couldn't shake the feeling that she'd brushed against a larger mystery. Stepping into the dim corridor, she sensed movement behind her, a fleeting shadow at the far end. "Hello?" she called softly, but no one answered. The only sound was her own heartbeat, thudding in her ears. Whatever the palace was hiding, Celine realized she was already entangled in it. And if the rustling figure in the dark was any sign, she wasn't the only one eyeing the gilded thorn. Dawn brought restless energy to the palace. Servants bustled through corridors, arms laden with linens, decorative ribbons, and crates of tableware. Celine found a quiet alcove outside the banquet hall to set up her temporary workstation. With the gilded thorn and a fresh pot of soil at her side, she began sorting through her new shipment of flowers, exquisite orchids, clusters of lavender, and delicate baby's breath she'd managed to procure despite the kingdom's rising demand. She was so absorbed in trimming and arranging that she barely noticed Prince Aurelian approach, flanked by 2 palace guards. He dismissed the guards with a nod, then took in Celine's floral preparations. "I see you found time to gather quite the variety," he said. Celine paused, offering a polite bow. "Yes, Your Highness, I brought the gilded thorn from the greenhouse. I thought it might be a centerpiece. It needs some care, but with a bit of luck, it'll regain its golden bloom." Aurelian's gaze flicked to the frail flower, and for a moment, concern etched across his face. "The thorn carries heavy legends, some noble, some dark. Are you sure it's wise?" A flutter of unease brushed Celine. "I believe the beauty of a flower depends on how it's nurtured," she said softly. "And from what I've seen of this wedding, it could use something extraordinary to overshadow the rumors." His expression slipped into something like gratitude. "Extraordinary indeed. But proceed with caution. There have been incidents." As though to confirm his statement, a footman rushed in, stammering about broken crates in the storeroom. Aurelian's eyes narrowed. "Another sabotage? I'll look into it." Then, turning back to Celine, he lowered his voice. "If anything seems amiss, or if you see that thorn disturbed, inform me at once." He offered a curt nod and strode off, leaving her reeling from the swift exchange. She exhaled. The prince's guarded demeanor hinted at layers of palace secrets she hadn't begun to fathom. But her part was clear. Ensure the wedding's floral arrangements remained untainted. Sabotage be damned. Moments later, Lady Corinne swept into view, her crimson gown trailing behind her like a wave of arrogance. My, such drama this morning, she commented, eyes flicking over Celine's workstation. Broken crates, scattered supplies. It seems everyone is on edge. Celine kept her tone cordial. Yes, it's unfortunate. We'll just have to work twice as hard to make sure the wedding is perfect. Corinne's gaze landed on the gilded thorn. A smirk curved her lips. Still chasing fairy tales, I see. Perhaps you should stick to simpler blossoms. After all, the palace can be unforgiving if your centerpiece fails to impress. Celine felt her temper flare but managed a polite smile. I'm willing to take the risk. Anything worth doing should carry a hint of the extraordinary, don't you think? Corinne said nothing, but her eyes flicked over the thorn like a predator assessing prey. Then she sauntered away, leaving an unsettling swirl of perfume in her wake. Celine shook off the tension, focusing on her immediate task, finishing the main banquet hall's centerpiece. By midday, she'd secured an array of vibrant lilies and roses into crystal vases, arranging them on tall pedestals flanking the hall's entrance. The gilded thorn, she decided, needed more sunlight if it had any hope of recovering. Taking the pot in careful hands, she ventured through the palace's winding corridors to a secluded veranda near the east wing. Ivy trailed along the stone railings, and sunlight filtered through, gentler than the harsh midday glare. She settled the thorn in a bright corner, kneeling to adjust the soil. The breeze carried the faint melody of a distant lute from some courtyard performance. For the first time since she arrived, Celine felt a moment's calm, until she noticed footprints in the damp floor near the veranda's entrance. Fresh footprints, too large to be her own, leading away from where she stood. The memory of the greenhouse footprints returned, setting her nerves on edge. Whoever was skulking around had likely followed the thorn. Was it Corinne snooping, or that mysterious cloaked figure, or someone else entirely? She remembered the glint of a ring in the lightning storm, a coiled serpent design. The foreign nobleman rumored to be the groom wore a similar ring, or so some servants whispered. Could he be the same shadow that haunted the greenhouse? Her pulse fluttered at the thought, but she wasn't about to cower. She rose, lips set in determination. If a saboteur lurked among them, she'd guard the thorn with every ounce of resolve she possessed. She might be a simple florist, but she was one with skill, passion, and, apparently, a knack for stepping directly into palace intrigues. Shaking off the uneasy sensation of being watched, she returned to the banquet hall. The wedding date drew nearer, and while tensions simmered beneath the surface, Celine intended to let her floral design shine, sabotage or not. She might have stepped into a story larger and darker than she'd ever imagined, but for now at least, she could meet that challenge bloom by bloom. As she reached her workstation, she smoothed the petals of a fresh lily, heart pounding with a mix of excitement and dread. The thorn was safe, for the moment, and she intended to keep it that way, no matter who might be prowling in the palace shadows. A restless dawn broke over the palace, shafts of early sunlight slicing through low-hanging clouds. Celine stood in the half-lit corridor outside her makeshift workstation, glancing at the footprints she had discovered the day before. They'd dried, but the print of a heeled boot was unmistakable, and larger than most. The memory of that coiled serpent ring glinting in lightning plagued her mind. Could the foreign nobleman, rumored to be the bridegroom, be stalking the gilded thorn? She sighed, stepping away to tend her tasks. A busy day lay ahead. The royal wedding was set to occur in little more than a day, and decorations for the hall, chapel, and banquet rooms needed to be flawless. Each corridor she passed crackled with tension, as though every staff member carried a burden of suspicion. Finally reaching the library, she gently pushed open the ornate doors. Inside, high shelves brimming with tomes stood in hushed grandeur. Gareth, the palace librarian, sat at a wide desk poring over a yellowed manuscript. He looked up with a soft smile. "Early start, I see. How can I help you?" Celine's gaze flicked to the title of the tome he was studying, The Royal Veil of Curses and Charms. Her chest tightened. "I need to know more about the gilded thorn," she said quietly, setting the pot containing the flower on a nearby table. "And about the rumors of sabotage. Someone's been prowling around whenever I'm with the thorn. I've even found destroyed crates of flowers. It's like someone wants this wedding to fail." Gareth removed his glasses, studying the thorn's withered leaves, some of which bore threads of golden sheen. "Ah, it's looking more vibrant than expected. Legend says the thorn will truly bloom only in the presence of deep sincerity." Some claim it's tied to an ancient vow. If the heir of the royal line marries for genuine love, the thorn's bloom breaks any lingering curse. He tapped the book's pages. Sabotage, in that context, could be a deliberate attempt to stop the marriage or prevent the thorn from blossoming. Celine's pulse pounded. But who'd want that? He frowned. Rival kingdoms, perhaps. Or even those within the court who stand to gain if the alliance never cements. Whispers name the foreign nobleman, Lord Marcos, as the official groom. But the details are suspiciously vague. If the wedding were thwarted, maybe his ties to the royal family would remain superficial. Or perhaps a different party stands to profit from chaos. Celine's mind reeled with implications. That hooded figure and the serpent ring pointed to a single suspect, Lord Marcos himself. But she had no proof, only a creeping dread that he might do something drastic. Just then, the library doors swung open. Prince Aurelian swept inside, posture stiff with tension. Spotting Celine and Gareth huddled over the thorn, he dismissed the guards who'd followed him and approached quietly. "Any news?" Celine ventured, stepping away from the flower. Aurelian's jaw tightened. More crates destroyed in the courtyard. A few staff claimed they saw a tall figure carrying a lamp late last night, headed toward the greenhouse. They described a ring with a serpent motif. His lips thinned. "We suspect Lord Marcos or someone in his retinue, but there's no solid evidence." Celine exchanged a knowing look with Gareth. "The thorn is still recovering," she murmured. "If Lord Marcos is behind this, he wants to ensure it never blooms. The question is why." Aurelian's eyes flicked to the thorn's glimmers of gold. "Let me worry about Lord Marcos. You make sure the flower is safe. If it can truly bloom, it might break more than just a storybook curse." His voice held a quiet intensity, as if he spoke of deeper matters beyond palace rumors. "We can't afford another century of misfortune or deception." He offered a brief nod and strode out, leaving Celine and Gareth in a swirl of questions. Once the prince was gone, Gareth shut the tome and rose. "If you need me, I'll be in the archives. Be careful. Sabotage often escalates when the culprit feels cornered." Celine thanked him and departed. The halls were unnervingly quiet, as if everyone tiptoed around a tension that might snap at any moment. She maneuvered the thorn pot to a private alcove near her workstation, hoping the location would remain secret. If sabotage threatened this wedding, she'd guard this flower herself. That afternoon, a sudden racket filled the banquet hall. Celine dashed in to find servants gathered in alarm around a toppled scaffolding. A riot of broken vases and shredded ribbons lay scattered on the polished floor. Lady Corinne stood to one side, pressing a hand against her mouth. Her gaze flicked to Celine, then away, as though uncertain how to react. "What happened?" Celine gasped. A red-faced steward shook his head. "Someone tampered with the scaffolding. The ropes were cut clean through. We're lucky no one was beneath it." Corinne grimaced, stepping forward. "I saw a tall figure slip out through the side door just before the crash. I tried to follow, but they vanished. I didn't see the face, only a ring on the left hand." She swallowed, her usual arrogance tempered by fear. It had a serpent design. Celine's heart clenched. So Corinne, too, had witnessed this? She found herself unexpectedly believing the rival florist's words. The saboteur was stepping up their game, and the same ring kept appearing like a twisted signature. As they cleaned up the fallen props, Corinne murmured in a low voice, "You must realize something bigger is at play. If the wedding fails, it might shame the royal family and sabotage us all." Her eyes flickered with an uncharacteristic seriousness. "Maybe you can make that thorn bloom for real. Show them we aren't doomed to repeat old tragedies." Startled by Corinne's sudden candor, Celine gave a quick nod. Was her rival actually encouraging her? Their rivalry now felt insignificant compared to the bigger threat lurking in the palace. Night fell fast, blanketing the corridors in torchlit gloom. Celine gathered her tools and returned to the thorn, checking its progress. To her amazement, one petal had regained its metallic sheen, no longer gray but shimmering like gold filigree. She brushed it gently, and the flower seemed to respond, standing more upright in its pot. A shuffle of footsteps made her whirl. Emerging from the shadows was none other than Lord Marcos himself, impeccable in a dark velvet cloak, the serpent ring gleaming on his finger. She stiffened, an unspoken alarm ringing in her mind. His lips curled into a practiced smile. "My lady Florist," he drawled. "Still coddling that relic? The thorn is rumored to bring more misery than blessing." Celine forced composure. "A rumor I intend to disprove, but it's late, my lord. Shouldn't you be preparing for the wedding tomorrow?" His smile thinned. "Indeed, preparation is key. One never knows what unexpected developments might occur." His gaze lingered on the thorn before he stepped back into the dim corridor. "Good evening, Miss Celine." He vanished like a wraith, leaving Celine's heart pounding. She could almost feel the malice radiating off him. Whatever tomorrow's ceremony held, it was clear Lord Marcos had his own designs, and none of them boded well for the royal family or the Gilded Thorn. Daybreak found the palace in a fevered rush. Servants scurried to lay fresh carpets, polish candelabras, and adorn marble statues with garlands. Trumpeters, perched near the grand entrance, practiced their fanfares, each note echoing off the courtyard walls. This should have been a day of celebration. Yet a palpable sense of dread wove through the corridors, thick as fog. Celine positioned the now partially revived Gilded Thorn at the heart of the chapel's altar arrangement, surrounding it with pristine white lilies and golden ribbons. Sunbeams fell through the high windows, illuminating the thorn's renewed petals. She marveled at how vibrant it looked, almost as if it sensed the day of destiny had arrived. Nearby, Prince Aurelian paced, brow furrowed in silent concentration. "Your Highness," Celine said gently, approaching him. "We've done all we can. Security is tight, the decorations are in place, and the thorn is ready." She hesitated, feeling the weight of her next words. "But Lord Marcos, he radiates hostility. I'm afraid he may—" Aurelian exhaled, a mixture of resolve and resignation in his eyes. "I know. I only pray everything proceeds before he makes his move." War. He glanced at the chapel doors, where rows of nobility were filing in, richly dressed and murmuring speculation. The call to begin sounded, and the royal officiant took his position at the altar. Musicians started a soft, stately melody. Lord Marcos, in ceremonial garb, stepped forward to stand at the altar's side. Whispers swept the pews, some audience members noting the ring on his finger. Celine lingered behind a pillar, nerves taut. She saw Corinne slip into a seat near the front, uncharacteristically pensive, no trace of her usual smugness. A hush settled when Prince Aurelian ascended the dais. He wore a gold-embroidered tunic that gleamed in the sun. The hush soon exploded into gasps when he didn't stand next to Lord Marcos. Instead, the prince faced him, expression grim. "People of the kingdom," Aurelian's voice reverberated through the chapel. "For centuries, our royal line has guarded a painful secret. Each wedding was cursed by false alliances and hidden agendas, culminating in sabotage and heartbreak." He leveled his gaze on Lord Marcos, whose veneer of calm wavered. "We believed offering a decoy groom would deflect threats, but that charade ends today." Celine felt a jolt of astonishment ripple through her. She'd suspected a deception. Gareth's records hinted as much. But hearing it confirmed in front of the entire court was monumental. A flurry of scandalized murmurs erupted among the nobility. Lord Marcos's jaw tensed, the serpent ring glinting in the chapel light. For a heartbeat, it seemed he might lash out. But the prince pressed on. "Your claims of union with this kingdom are a sham. The true groom," Aurelian paused, voice low yet firm, "is me." Shocked silence strangled the chapel. Celine's eyes widened. Suddenly, so much clicked into place. The sabotage, the secrecy, the unwavering focus on every detail. Aurelian had been orchestrating the wedding from behind a curtain of misdirection. The Gilded Thorn's revival was tied to his genuine intent. Lord Marcos's sabotage was aimed at ensuring no real vow could be fulfilled. The foreign nobleman's face contorted with rage. In that moment, he reached inside his cloak, perhaps for a concealed blade or a vile trick. But the palace guards sprang forward, anticipating the move. Cornered, Marcos muttered a low oath. He cast one last baleful glare at the prince and at the thorn before storming out of the chapel doors, robes swirling like a dark cloud. Aurelian let out an audible breath. Turning to the officiant, he stated, "We will proceed, properly this time." Then, as if guided by an unseen force, he looked past the gathered nobles, straight at Celine. Her heart thundered. The thorn's petals gleamed brighter, seemingly in silent recognition. She stepped forward, cheeks aflame. Your Highness," she managed, voice trembling. He smiled softly, all the weight and tension receding in that gesture. "Celine, you've cared for this kingdom's symbol of hope. You've protected it against threats. And more than that, you've shown the sincerity required to make it bloom." Emotions flooded her. Disbelief, wonder, and a blossoming certainty. She understood now. The wedding was about true devotion that transcended status and illusions. The thorn was proof of it. Aurelian extended his hand. "Will you stand at my side?" Murmurs swept the chapel. Corinne's eyes widened. Even she appeared genuinely moved. Celine realized her rival wasn't sneering, perhaps impressed or, more likely, humbled by the gravity of this moment. Despite every sabotage, the possibility of a real curse-breaking union shone brighter than the gilded arches overhead. She took the prince's hand, voice catching as she answered, "I will." In a swirl of astonished applause and a few scandalized gasps, the officiant guided them through a swift ceremony. And as Aurelian spoke his vows, the gilded thorn erupted in full golden glory. Petals gleamed with an otherworldly radiance, as though centuries of sorrow lifted at once. Behind the final flourish of trumpets, Lord Marcos fled the palace, outraged and humiliated. Guards confirmed they found evidence of his sabotage in a hidden chamber: spools of cut rope, empty vials of plant poison, and ominous sketches of the thorn. The cloak and ring were his tools of secrecy, just as Celine and the thorn were the kingdom's symbols of renewal. When it was done, Aurelian and Celine faced the assembled crowd, united by an undeniable bond. Across the chapel, Corinne offered a subtle nod of respect before stepping aside. Her rivalry surrendered to the moment's grandeur. The curse had finally broken, undone by honest love and a single revived bloom. In that radiant instant, any shadows of sabotage melted away, leaving the kingdom poised on the brink of a hopeful new dawn. If you liked the video, subscribe to the channel. Your subscription will show that I'm on the right path to bring you the best videos ever. And if you enjoyed this video, check this one out too.